You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Hristodoulou.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron. I'm Ethan Hristodoulou, and today I am recapping the results of this year's collegiate draft for the USFL. A lot to get into, a lot to talk about. We're talking 10 rounds of selections here, some really solid picks in a lot of the rounds. I would say there was a few that probably felt more like rights selections more than anything else. Guys that maybe aren't playing this year but might be around next season or the year after, depending on how their careers in the NFL shake out. But I'm really excited to dive into this with you all. So make sure you comment down below. Let me know, how are you feeling about your team in this year's collegiate USFL draft? Who do you think made out best? Are you happy with your team selections? Are you unhappy with some team selections? Are you impressed by what some of the other teams around the league did? I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions. I will start this video off by saying this. I really wish that the USFL draft had some form of in-person event. Even if they don't have the players there to accept the draft selection, it would be nice to just see them have some sort of tangible thing where they're coming in and announcing the selections. It would just make it feel a little more real to me. But following along on Twitter was not a bad way to do so. Also, shout out to the USFL podcast. They were live streaming the picks as they were happening, and that was a real fun way to keep an eye on things as I was going through the gym, because I was working out during the draft for the early portion of it, and I didn't really have time to just keep checking my phone, so I had them just kind of playing in my ears as I was going through, and it was nice to be able to listen to that as I was doing my thing. But starting off with round number 1, we'll dive right in here. You'll see on the screen here over to the left-hand side, you're going to see the entire group of draftees for this round. In pick number 1, Jarrett Horst going to the Panthers, Lindsey Scott Jr. going to the Maulers, Chase Bryce, I think a pretty solid selection for the Gamblers. At number 4, Mason Brooks going to the Showboats. At number 5, we're looking at the Breakers taking Tyler Scott. Alfred Edwards III is going to the Stars, and then Kadeem Telfort going to the Stallions to round out round number 1, and obviously the Generals' first round selection being moved to round number 10 due to a penalty because of the way some sort of roster mismanagement thing that they were essentially fined for by having their first round draft pick moved all the way to the 10th round. I will say my favorite selection in this round here in round number 1 is going to have to be quarterback Chase Bryce of the Gamblers. I'm a really big fan of how this shook out for them, being able to take a quarterback, especially when you consider the team really struggling on offense in the passing game last year. Not the ground game by any means. They had a really strong rushing attack, but for them to get someone like Chase Bryce, who's, from App State, he's a legitimate playmaker is not exactly the right word I want to go with. He is a dude. He's a baller. He is a gamer. He is somebody that loves the game of football and someone that you can expect to put up a fight in games. He had 31 touchdowns, 6 interceptions with 2,900 total yards this past season. He's got the size you want, being 6'3" at 235 pounds. Definitely a selection that if you're a Gamblers fan, you should be excited about. Moving into round number 2, we are looking at Tanner Morgan, the quarterback, going to the Panthers, Malik Ham, the D-end, going to the Maulers, cornerback Justin Ford going to the Gamblers. At number 11, we have Isaiah Bolden from Jackson State, the cornerback, going to the Showboats. At number 12, you have the Breakers taking Noah Taylor, Anderson Hardy going to the Stars. We have Quentin Barrow, the offensive tackle from Grand Valley State, going to the Stallions, and then Adrian Martinez, the quarterback from Kansas State, going to the Generals. I will say that last selection there by the Generals, not too surprising, obviously losing out on Luis Perez. He's currently playing in the XFL, so to see them go after a quarterback makes a lot of sense in the early rounds, but I really like the selection of Tanner Morgan, the quarterback for the Panthers here. At 6'2", 200 pounds, a solid-sized guy at the quarterback position. If he suits up, I think he brings a real spark of hope at a position that was an absolute mess for the Panthers last year, a literal carousel of quarterbacks, if you will, just from beginning to end for Michigan, and which was unfortunate because they had a pretty solid rushing attack too. One of two teams that were just kind of plagued with not so great quarterback play. So if he's able to suit up for the Panthers this season, I think that would be a massive pickup for them. He had 30 touchdowns, 121.1 passer rating in 2019, and wrote to a really strong year with Minnesota. So if he plays and suits up for them, I really, really like the selection for the Panthers here, and hopefully it kind of cleans up what was, again, an otherwise really messy year at a really important spot on your team. Looking at round number 3, we have ourselves, and if I butcher some of these names, excuse me, I'm sorry, but I believe this is Santrell Latham, linebacker out of Southern Miss, at number 16 going to the Panthers. At 17, we have Traquan Dorsey going to the Maulers. Joseph Fisher, the offensive guard from Shepherd, going to the Gamblers. We're looking at Bruin Allen going to the Showboats, a DN from Campbell. DJ Ivy, cornerback from Miami, I think a really good pick if he ends up playing there for the Breakers. Isaac Moore, the offensive tackle from Temple, going to the Stars. Malik Cunningham, quarterback from Louisville, being drafted by the Stallions, a really bold pick there, if I do say so myself. And then J.J. Holloman, the wide receiver from Tennessee State, going to the Generals at 23. So for me, in this round here, really big fan of the Stallions going after Malik Cunningham. I would say that quarterback's not necessarily the most worrisome position for them, but for them to be able to look towards the future and know that you're getting a young guy who's very athletic and I would say undersized in terms of just like weight and height, weight to height ratio for the NFL. He's only 6'1", which isn't short by any means, but not necessarily the tallest guy. He's only 188 pounds though, so a little bit undersized in NFL standards in terms of weight, but he is projected somewhere around like a late, I'm talking like 7th round pick to being an undrafted guy. I would be a little surprised if he doesn't at least make a practice squad for the NFL. So this one more of like a rights type of selection, I would say, for the Stallions. But to know that you have a guy who, should things not pan out for him, or maybe, he opts to take the opportunity to play this spring and, cut his teeth a little bit with some guys during this time, rather than just kind of sitting as like the, we'll say 75th man on a roster or something like that through training camp. Obviously, you want to be in front of the NFL's eyes, but nothing is necessarily guaranteed. And what better way to separate yourself from those 80 some odd guys that are just working their way through a roster in training camp than by putting on some actual game film during spring football when, say, these coaches finally have a few seconds of time to relax and unwind on a Sunday and you just happen to be the quarterback throwing the football for the Birmingham Stallions. I think that would be a really good opportunity for someone like Malik Cunningham. Now, looking at round number 4 here, the Panthers with their fourth selection, going after DJ, I believe it's Scaife Jr. It could be Scaife, but I believe it's Scaife Jr., offensive lineman from Miami. Then we are looking at Fernando Jordan, DN from Southeastern Louisiana, going to the Maulers. Scott Matlock, the D-tackle from Boise State, going to the Gamblers. We got Benny Sapp III, defensive back from Northern Iowa, going to the Showboats. Keaton Mitchell, the running back from East Carolina, going to the Breakers here. Good pick there for the Breakers. Truman Jones, DN from Harvard. Darius Davis, wide receiver from TCU, and we'll talk about him in a second here. I feel like we're praising the Stallions a lot with some of their selections as I go through this whole recap here. And then Victor Jones, the DN from Akron, going to the Generals to wrap up round number 4. I will say that I think Darius Davis is probably my favorite selection in this round here. So again, hats off to the Stallions on this pick. He's 5'10", 168 pounds, so not the most imposing guy in terms of size, which I think might leave him off some teams' draft board just because he's not necessarily the biggest of guys. But he has shown some flashes here and there at TCU, being in that high-flying, powerful type. I don't want to say high flying because they were really a very strong running team as well. But for somebody who was on a really good roster and made it to the biggest game, you have that big game experience from him now that you like to see from some young guys, something that, puts him talk about one of the largest games in the United States every single year, the national championship for college football. I mean, you get a guy like that with that kind of big game experience. Yes, he wasn't the guy in the wide receiver room for TCU, but I will say that having a guy like him on your roster, assuming he doesn't make it to an NFL team, should feel really good if you are a Stallions fan or if you're that coaching staff over there for Birmingham. In round number 5, I'm looking at Deshaun White, the linebacker from Oklahoma, going to the Panthers with their 5th pick here in the draft. Isaiah Land, DN from Florida A&M, going to the Maulers. Jeffrey Johnson, the D-tackle from Oklahoma, going to the Gamblers. We got Michael, I believe this is Ezike. I could be wrong on the pronunciation for that one, so please let me know. Tight end from UCLA. We got Isaiah Moore, the linebacker from NC State, going to the Breakers. Earl Bostic Jr., the offensive tackle of Kansas, going to the Stars. We got Zeke Vandenberg going to the Stallions, DN from Illinois State, and then Dejon Warren, cornerback from Jackson State, going to the Generals here. I will say that I've got to give a shout out to the Maulers on this one here. Projected as a 6th round guy. So this is someone that you might not even see playing for the the Maulers this season, but someone that if you end up getting him down the road, you have the rights to him maybe in a couple of years or so, or maybe things don't work out for him initially in the NFL. This is someone that had 34 quarterback pressures last season with 7 sacks included in that number there. Talk about a guy who can bring the pressure and fortify a defensive front over there in Pittsburgh. I really like this selection for the Maulers should he end up suiting up in that new black and gold. But even if he's not here year one, again, all of these guys, they don't count to the rosters right now because there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding some of these players. We'll find out a little bit closer to the NFL draft and how things shake out once teams start signing undrafted free agents. But if the Maulers can land Isaiah Land, no pun intended, I think he's a really good pickup for that defensive front. In round number 6, you're looking at Levi Russo-Bell, D-tackle from Texas State, going to the Panthers. We have Nash Jensen, the offensive guard from North Dakota State, going to the Maulers. Keenan Isaac, cornerback from Alabama State, going to the Gamblers. Jerome Carvin, the offensive guard from Tennessee, going to the Showboats. We got Dante Stills, a D-lineman from West Virginia, going to the Breakers. Derek Tucker, a safety, going to the Generals from Texas Southern. Jose Ramirez, the DN from Eastern Michigan, going to the Stars. And then Colby Sorsdahl, offensive tackle from William and Mary, wrapping things up in the 6th round, going to the Stallions. This one in particular, I'm a really big fan of because the Showboats got themselves a really big guy and someone from a big school that has real potential to be available to you come springtime when things kick off for the USFL. And I'm talking the guard Jerome Carvin for the Showboats there from Tennessee. Somebody from a big school, a big man, 6'5", 308 pounds, someone who can shore up the offensive line for you. This is an awesome selection. This dude is massive with a humongous wingspan, one of the bigger wingspans in this year's draft class as a whole. He's projected as an undrafted free agent. He played in 791 snaps in 2022, allowing only 7 quarterback hurries, 2 hits and 1 singular sack. You want to talk about getting a guy that's going to lock up some of the interior defensive linemen? You better hope so and hope that he is available because Jerome Carvin, I think, is a monster steal if he's suiting up for the Showboats this season or maybe even in the following seasons to come. He looked really good this past season, and I really, really like this pick for the Showboats. Now, diving into round number 7, we're looking at Gunnar Oaks, a tight end from Eastern Michigan, going to the Panthers to start off this round. Taylor Grimes, the wide receiver from Incarnate Ward, going to the Maulers. We have Alex Jensen, the offensive tackle from South Dakota, going to the Gamblers. We're then looking at Nehemiah Shelton, cornerback from San Jose State. He's going to the Showboats. Darius Hagens, I believe. Hagens is the pronunciation on that one. Could be Hagens, but I think it's Hagens. Running back from Virginia State, going to the Breakers. Jermaine McDaniel, DN from North Carolina, A&T. He is going to the New Jersey Generals. DeMontre Jacobs, offensive tackle, going from South Florida to the Stars. And then Grant Dubose, wide receiver from Charlotte, wrapping up round number 7, heading off to the Stallions. My favorite selection in this round here has got to be wide receiver Taylor Grimes for the Maulers here. You want to talk about a legit FCS monster. This guy was unbelievable. 5'11", 188 pounds, not necessarily the most imposingly sized human being by any means, but he had a whopping 83 catches, 1,221 yards, and 15 receiving touchdowns. You want to talk about a diamond in the rough in the later rounds? Taylor Grimes fits the bill to a T, and this guy is going to be a legitimate threat for the Maulers. I'm really excited to see how he pans out for them, and I'm really hoping he makes it into the USFL because I think that this is a guy, again, diamond in the rough type deal, not the most physically imposing guy, but a guy who can put up numbers when given the opportunity to do so. I think he is going to be a massive pickup for this Maulers team if he's suiting up in that black and gold. Looking at round number 8, we have ourselves Andrew Farmer II, DN from Lane College, going to the Panthers. CJ Turner, wide receiver from Southeastern Louisiana, going to the Maulers. Brady Russell, tight end from Colorado, going to the Gamblers. We have Trey... this is another one here. I want to say Shropshire, wide receiver from UAB, going to the Showboats. Jake Bobo, wide receiver from UCLA, going to the Breakers. Adam Korsak, the punter from Rutgers, drafted by the Generals. Trey Botts, D lineman from Colorado State Pueblo, going to the Stars. And then Mark Evans, the second offensive guard from Arkansas, Pine Bluff, going to the Stallions. For me personally, in this 8th round here, I really like, and shout out to my New Orleans Breakers on this one here, wide receiver Jake Bobo, 6'5", 216 pounds. He is a big man with a big upside. He's not somebody that's going to necessarily blow the top off of defenses with his speed, and that was a criticism I was seeing pop up a lot about him when I was doing some of the research on these guys here. But nearing 800 yards in his last 2 college seasons, this guy can be a matchup nightmare because at 6'5", 216, and someone who's actually praised for his play strength because he plays really aggressively, are you going to match up a safety, a linebacker, a corner? Who do you think you need to set up with this guy? Someone who could play a variable role depending on what you need to do, and someone who could be a really big target in the red zone for the Breakers. I'm really excited about this guy here. This is someone that I really expect to see playing in the USFL this season, so if he ends up making it and he's playing this year, I will be really looking forward to seeing how his production pans out for the Breakers. Now, in round number 9, getting close to the end here, 2 rounds to go, we got Chim Okorafor, offensive tackle from Benedictine. Benedictine. I don't really know how to pronounce that, to be honest with you. Offensive tackle, though, going to the Panthers for the first selection in round number 9. We got Jacob Slade, D-tackle from Michigan State, going to the Maulers. Jason Taylor II from Oklahoma State, the safety, going to the Gamblers. We have Silas Dzansi, I believe that's pronounced, Virginia Tech's offensive tackle, going to the Showboats. We're looking at Alec, and this is another one here. Alec Palshevsky. I believe that's Palshevsky. I know it's spelled Zewski, but I believe that's Shevsky. I could be wrong on that one. Please let me know. Offensive tackle from Illinois. He is going to the Breakers. Jalen Holston, running back from Virginia Tech, off to the Generals. Destin Mack, quarterback from Citadel, going to the Stars. And then BJ Thompson, DN from Stephen F. Austin, going to the Stallions. For me, this one's a no-brainer here. Safety Jason Taylor II going to the Gamblers. And this is another team that I feel like I've praised a lot for a handful of their selections. This is a money selection here in round number 9. Do I think he's going to make it into an NFL team? Definitely a potential for that. I've seen some places call him an undrafted guy. I've seen some places say maybe a 7th round. I feel like this is somebody that's probably going to make a roster in some capacity, at least through the early stages into training camp. Now, again, like I mentioned with some other players earlier, do you want to try to fight the weeds and, fight within the weeds with, 80 some odd guys on a roster in training camp trying to separate yourself from everyone else? Or do you want to maybe get yourself into some in-game action and playing live on TV on a Sunday when some of these coaches might be just settling down and watching some spring football come April, May, June, something like that? Who necessarily knows? But let me say that Jason Taylor II is an absolute playmaker. He has great size, great speed. He's 6'8", 208 pounds, mind you. Really good size for a guy that's as fast as he is. His numbers between 2021 and 2022 are absolutely unbelievable. In 1,613 snaps in those 2 years, he totaled for 142 total tackles, 38 stops, 6 pass breakups, 8 interceptions, 6 of those being in 2022, so some progression there shown, and then 2 sacks as well. Not sure how he is graded so low because he has the talent, the size, and the speed. He clearly has a nose for the football, good instincts as well. I would be a little shocked to not see him make a roster this year. Again, one of those picks that is maybe more of like a rights type of thing, just to have him on your roster per se, should things not work out for him in the big league. But If he ends up playing in the USFL, watch out for this guy because that's someone that you'd want to have on the back end of your defense every day of the week if you're any team in the USFL. And then to wrap things up in round number 10, final round of the draft, we're looking at Sidney So, offensive guard from Eastern Michigan, going to the Panthers. Ethan Evans, punter from Wingate, going to the Maulers. Colby Reeder, DN from Iowa State. He's going to the Gamblers. We got Antonio Fletcher, safety from Southern Illinois, going to the Showboats. We got Tyler Baker Williams, cornerback from NC State. I think that's a solid selection there for the Breakers. And then at number 77, I almost just said his last name, Nick Zecchino, I believe is how that's pronounced. Again, one of those, correct me if I'm wrong, long snapper from Purdue. An interesting one there, long snapper, not one that we have seen yet up until this point in the draft. We got Dre Terry, the linebacker from Alabama A&M, going to the Stars. The Stallions take Starling Thomas, cornerback out of UAB, with their final selection. And then the Generals, their first round selection being bumped all the way to the very end of the draft, picking up, this is one really tough name to wrap this thing up here, butchering that. My full name is Athanasios, and I'm over here stumbling over other people's names too. I'm going to say Rayondas Estes, if I'm saying that correctly. Cornerback from Grambling State, the final selection in the draft, going to the Generals here. I will say that my favorite to wrap up this whole results and recap video got to be linebacker Dre Terry for the Stars in this final round here. At 6'1", 235 pounds, some really imposing size, and a guy who clearly has a nose for making plays when it comes to football. The numbers speak for themselves, and for them to have gotten this guy in round number 10, he's an all-around linebacker. He had 85 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, a sack and a half, an interception, and a forced fumble this past season. You want to talk about a guy who can produce for you in a number of different ways and at a really high level. I really like Dre Terry for the Stars here. I think this is a really good pick, and especially so late in the draft in round number 10 for him to be sitting there and for them to be able to scoop him up and run away with him. This is another guy projected to be undrafted, not on a lot of teams' radars, someone that I could really see playing this year, as soon as this year in the USFL. I think that is an excellent selection for the Stars. Overall, though, I'm really excited to see how this whole thing pans out. I've got to say that, there's a lot of uncertainty with this draft, and I've seen a lot of comments about it, and, teams wasting all these selections for guys that aren't going to be there. This draft was never necessarily about picking up a guy that's going to be there for you day number 1. None of these guys actually even count for the rosters at this point. They are just guys that you now own the rights for. And whether they end up playing for you or not is kind of TBD, and we'll see how things shake out. But for them to at least own the rights and be able to tell these players, hey, we want you. If things are not going well for you elsewhere, we want you here. I think that means a lot for some of these people that are fighting for spots and are maybe not going to be able to realize their NFL dreams right this very second, but have an opportunity and a platform like the USFL to be able to go out, play, put on more film in a more like professional type of setting rather than in a collegiate setting. I think will speak volumes to a lot of these players, and you might be shocked how many people opt to play spring football rather than, again, fight it out with 80 to 90 other guys during the summer in just drills day after day. Yeah, you're right in front of coaches, but it's not real game settings. You can only determine so much. Whereas in this case, in the USFL, you're playing spring ball, you're putting on active game tape, and you're competing against players. Nothing is mocked out. It's all real in-game football. And I know that's going to mean a lot for some coaches. And just with the reactions that we're seeing from the XFL right now, I'm sure coaches are going to be paying attention as the USFL kicks off as well. There's going to be a lot of eyes watching, so don't be too surprised if some of these people that you wrote off that aren't going to be playing in the USFL might find them playing year number 1 of their eligibility in the USFL. Maybe they don't play this year, maybe they play next year, maybe they don't at all. A lot of TBD and we'll see type deals, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how it all happens and how it all shakes out. But this is a big step for the USFL and really legitimizing themselves, so I think this is a fantastic opportunity for them, and I think they nailed it. We'll see how it shakes out, but again, I would love to hear your opinions. Let me know what you all think of the draft. How did your team fare? How did the other teams fare? Who won the draft for the very first time in the USFL, a collegiate draft? Who comes out on top? Let me know in the comment section down below. I appreciate you all for watching if you made it to the end of this video. I'll catch you all next time. Have a good one.